actors in horror movies have developed a bit of a talent for, well, dying, with some being far more memorable than others. However, did some of those deaths have to be quite so horrific? In this list, we'll be commemorating the sorry sods that not only bit the dust in a horror movie, but did so in a way that was pretty damn unfair. Of course, because we are talking about character death in film, spoiler alert. I'm Tilly from What Culture Horror, and these are 10 horror movie characters who got undeservingly brutal deaths. Number 10. Sanghwa, Train to Busan. After 28 Days Later kicked off the notion of the fast zombie in 2002, Train to Busan revitalised it and turned it into a wholly fresh and terrifying story 14 years later. Train to Busan is a fast-paced, tightly knit tale of a zombie outbreak in South Korea that masterfully combines horror and genuinely fantastic character development. One of the fleshed out, if you'll pardon the turn of phrase, characters who audiences grew to love was the tough-as-nails Sanghwa. A father-to-be with a strong sense of justice and some kick-ass zombie-busting moves, Sanghwa seemed to be someone who could easily make it to the end of the film. However, it was that sense of justice that ended up being his downfall. Heroic Sanghwa sacrifices himself to save a group of other survivors, succumbing to the zombie virus that he spent much of the movie fighting against. A brutal death that was certainly not deserved. Number 9. Abbot, A Quiet Place. What could have easily been John Krasinski's passion project actually became one of the best horror films of the decade, as 2018's A Quiet Place brought the horror and heartfelt drama in buckets. The story follows the Abbot family after the world has been taken over by aliens that hunt via sound, living in a world without noise in order to survive, communicating through sign language, walking on paths of sand, and avoiding the malicious extraterrestrials at all costs. At the head of the family is Lee, played by Krasinski himself, a caring, practical, and devoted father who prioritises his family above all else. The audience admire him as a good dad, a clever survivor, and a loving husband. The complete package, really. Similarly to Sanghwa of the previous entry, Lee's strengths are the cause of his death. When his children are being attacked by one of the aliens, Lee lets out an anguished scream to save them, alerting the creature to his presence to distract it long enough for his kids to escape. Thankfully, the camera doesn't linger on Lee's presumably gruesome death, as that would have been far too much for audiences to handle. Number 8. Elizabeth Shaw, Alien Covenant. Prometheus was like Marmite. Some loved it and some f***ing hated it. However, it was universally agreed that protagonist Elizabeth Shaw was a badass, smart, and a capable main character who we all wanted to see more of. That sort of happened in the sequel, Alien Covenant. One half of the Michael Fassbender android duo in this movie, David, informs crew members of the Covenant that Shaw died in a spaceship crash. Bit annoying that such a cool character died without being given a proper send-off on screen. However, as David's deceptive and cruel nature is revealed, the audience learns that not only did the cold-hearted droid purposefully decimate the engineer population, but he murdered Shaw too. In order to create the perfect organism, David was essentially playing God without caring for casualties. Shaw was one such casualty. Her body found split open by a chestburster and experimented upon by David himself. Casual and long-time fans of the Alien saga know how painful that experience is, and given that Shaw was far from deserving of such a fate, it made it all the more brutal. Number 7. Dick Halloran, The Shining. Despite being one of only 2 deaths seen on screen during Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, Dick Halloran's death really sucked to watch. A figure for young Danny Torrance to look up to, as both a responsible adult and someone who shared his ability to shine, Dick was a light in the darkness that descended upon the Overlook Hotel. The likeability of the character is also greatly credited to the performance of Scatman Crothers, which perfectly blended Halloran's cool authority and warm nature. After picking up on a psychic distress call from Danny, Jack Torrance, now completely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs at this point, attacks him with an axe, and Dick is killed. The kill itself is racially motivated, as well as being a very strange addition by Kubrick. In Stephen King's novel, Halloran survived, not only contributing to the trope that a black character usually dies first in a horror movie, but arguably unnecessary. This death was the definition of undeserving. Number 6. Barbara, Shaun of the Dead. For a supposed horror comedy, this 2004 classic packed a hell of an emotional punch. Protagonist Shaun's mum, Barbara, is sweet, kind, and an all-round good egg. Therefore, when she's revealed to have been bitten by one of the undead horde, both Shaun and the audience are understandably miserable at this revelation. Barbara deserved to make it to the end of the movie, not get bitten and die so close to the finish line. She didn't admit her condition to the others sooner, as she didn't want to be a bother, which only adds to her truly angelic nature. What makes this worse is that Shaun has to shoot his own mum when the infection takes over. Okay, breathe. It's as emotional as it gets, as Sean tearfully tells his mum that he's sorry before having to shoot her. Given how attached the audience has become to the ragtag team of survivors, except David, f*** you David, Barbara's death is as brutal for her loving son as it is for the shocked audience. Number 5. Ben, Night of the Living Dead. This character is quite possibly the king of deserved better. Having survived the OG zombie invasion in George A. Romero's classic film Night of the Living Dead, Ben was certain to be an icon of the newly created subgenre of horror. With incredibly quick decision-making skills, natural leadership, and good old compassion and empathy, Ben had managed to survive the night and do his best to ensure the survival of everyone else at the farmhouse. Ben also refused to put up with any of the nonsense levelled at him by Harry. Yet the last few moments of the film were utterly soul-destroying, as Ben is mistaken for a zombie and shot dead. At the time, this moment was a prevalent instance of social commentary and could not be any more pertinent today. Aside from the social context, it left a really sour taste in the mouth of the viewer to see Ben killed after everything he'd just done, as well as it being for no reason. Number 4. Alison Kerry, Saw 3. This one is quite possibly the most brutal of the lot. Having been in the first 2 Saw movies, Dina Meyer's Alison Kerry was rightfully put into the spotlight at the beginning of the 3rd installment of the franchise. Many viewers hoped that this film would be her time to shine. Kerry is smart, capable, and keeps a cool head in a crisis, so it would have been amazing to see her pitted against the calculating jigsaw killer directly. Sadly, it wasn't to be. When put into a jigsaw trap, Kerry quickly grits her teeth and does exactly what she has to do, because she's a f***ing badass, yet it's Jigsaw's apprentice Amanda pulling the strings this time, and she's rigged the trap so even if Alison beat it, the trap would go off. Kerry is unfairly and disgustingly torn apart, and the franchise lost an iconic character who could have gone on to do so much more. Number 3. Charlie Graham, Hereditary. How has it been like 3 years since Hereditary came out and we're collectively just still not over what happened to poor Charlie? Granted, given the insidious cult at the heart of the film was behind it all the whole time, Charlie was arguably always going to end up 6 feet under, but did it have to be like that? You know, done that way, specifically. It is a fantastically crafted scene, and Ari Aster's cinematic eye was incredibly developed for his first feature film. The desperate terror in Charlie's eyes, the panicked driving, that horrid, meaty thwack, and then the focus on older brother Peter's reaction is just pure gold in terms of filmmaking. But that doesn't detract from the sheer nastiness of it all. The brutality is increased when we see the immediate reaction to Charlie's demise, as Toni Collette gives a hauntingly unforgettable performance as Charlie's grieving mother. Those howls of grief are not easily scrubbed from one's memory. Number 2. Winslow the Lighthouse. Like Ari Aster, director Robert Eggers is a darling of the modern horror film canon. The Lighthouse and his directorial debut The Witch have become firmly lodged in the hearts of horror fans everywhere. The Lighthouse is a weird, fantastical film that veers between ancient Greek tragedy, Victorian-era class struggles, and a critical scrutiny of masculinity and God. And it's bloody good too. Protagonist Robert Pattinson's Winslow is far from a perfect man, as his beans are spilled throughout the film. That's not a masturbation joke, he genuinely spills his beans, as well as spilling other things, eh? And he's also prone to rage and a bit of murder. However, the audience sees elements of themselves in him, an everyday guy trying to make a living in a mad, cruel world until he can happily live on his own. Yet his obsession with the lighthouse where he works becomes all-consuming. He descends into madness in order to ascend the imposing structure. By the end of the film, he has achieved this, but at the cost of his sanity and humanity. Perhaps as punishment, the final few moments of the film show him being torn apart by the seagulls that taunted him throughout the film. They are unflinching in their brutality. Winslow certainly didn't deserve that Promethean fate, even after we'd been subjected to his, antics. Number 1. Sergeant Neil Howie, The Wicker Man. What's more brutal, being set ablaze while trapped in a pagan structure, or having your movie be remade and turned into one of the biggest memes in the film world? All jokes aside, Sergeant Howie's fate in the original 1973 film is nothing short of horrific. Unable to save himself, he can only watch and wait for the flames to reach him and then be subjected to one of the most painful ways to die imaginable. Howie didn't even do anything wrong. He was simply sent to do his job, and he was trying to save what he thought was an innocent girl. It isn't fair. Probably the most morally upstanding person on this list, Howie may have met the 4 requirements of the pagan cult, but as far as horror movies go, he was absolutely saintly. Howie did not deserve what happened to him, poor harvest or not, and the merry singing of islanders responsible is just beyond chilling. And that's our list. What other characters were killed off in a really unfair way? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and swing on by our channel again soon. I've been Tilly, and this has been What Culture. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you soon. Bye bye.